So why in the world am I going to talk to you about compliance in medicine? We're at a business conference, last time I checked anyway. The medical field is really, really ahead in doing some research on compliance and adherence. They spend loads of money on it. There's lots of data on it. And in reading that and then starting to learn things about business and leadership, there are tons of parallels, so many parallels that I feel like we should maybe take a look at this and learn a few things, take it back to work. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about compliance? Well, the first thing that comes to mind for everyone is taking pills when you're supposed to, how you're supposed to, in the dose you're supposed to, with water, without water, all of that jazz, right? Something that most people don't think about but is considered part of compliance is how much you're telling the truth to your doctor. Are you telling them the whole truth? Are you telling them that I'm not going to the gym at all? I do drink more than 1 glass a week, but are you giving them the entire truth while you're there? And these last couple are about, do you take the advice? So are you taking the doctor's advice when they say, like, look, you really need to get some more exercise or else we're going to be talking about diabetes next time, right? It's about stay off of the sprained ankle. Don't go walking around, even though crutches are a pain. It's about making diet changes when you're asked, those kinds of things. So standing in a business and leadership perspective, we can think about a lot of this as doing the tasks that we're asking you to do in the way that we're asking you to do them, right? At the right time, at the right place. We're talking about honest upward reporting. Are you giving me all the information that I need to do my job to help you, right? And we're also talking about, are you taking my advice for what I'm suggesting you do on a daily basis, on where I'm suggesting you should spend your time or how, those kinds of things. I'm going to talk about 3 factors. There are others, but I'm going to talk about 3 that I think make a lot of sense when it comes to leadership here. So this first one, complexity. If I ask you to take 5 pills a day, do you think you're really going to do that well? If I ask you to take 1 pill a day, do you think you could manage that? Right. Research says, hands down, the more we're asking of people to do, especially when it comes to these kinds of things, taking things at the right time, doing these complex tasks, the less compliance you're going to get. As you make that more complex, the less compliance you're going to get every single time, okay? So when we're talking about leadership, if you don't need to tell people to stand on 1 foot with 1 hand on their head and the other hand, tied behind their back to do a task, don't do it, right? Simplicity in requests. Why? Another factor that really increases compliance is a patient's understanding of why you're asking them to do the things you're telling them to do. So in the exam room, if you understand why the doctor's given you this dose of antibiotics and why it needs to be taken in a certain way at a certain time, you're more likely to do it, right? That makes a lot of sense to most of us. We walk into the workplace, and a lot of times if you ask people why they're filling out a certain form or why they're doing a certain thing, they kind of go, because I think we're supposed to. I don't really know what it does, I just know I'm supposed to do it. So if you're having trouble getting people to complete tasks that are important tasks, that have a good reason behind them, give them those reasons. You may know the reason, they may not. So if you're finding yourself struggling to get some compliance, give them the information. Let them understand why you're asking these things of them. So this last one, how many of you would say your doctor's a pretty nice human being? You like them, all right? Yeah, I kind of expected that. So none of us seem to know where our doctor went to school. We hope it was a medical school. We like to assume that, right? What matters in compliance, surprisingly or not, is how you feel about your doctor. If you like your doctor, if you think they're a nice person, that they're warm, they're invested in your patient care, they really care about you, you are much more likely to do what they're asking of you than if you think they're cold and kind of pulled back, right? The more you like your doctor, the more honest you're going to be in the exam room. If every time you open your mouth to say, yeah, I haven't made it to the gym lately, you get a lecture, well, none of us are going to open our mouth. The next time we're going to be like, yep, 5 times a week, that was it, This next one is a really pinpointed behavior. The number of times a doctor interrupts a patient in the patient room impacts compliance. So if you find yourself constantly cutting people off when you're asking things of them, you may be having a pretty dramatic effect on whether or not they're going to listen to you after that, right? So if we can watch that behavior very particularly, that's a great one. This last one. If you have a history, we all have a history, right? If you have a history of bad medical care, bad doctors, the chances that you're going to perceive your next doctor as not being very good are much increased. They may not have had that before now, but now that they do, they may have a little bit of, there's a little bit of a taint to how they view you. They've had these really horrible experiences, never had a boss that cared about them. That's kind of how you're going to be perceived. Fair or not, that's what you're up against, right? So if you can recognize that, if you're having some trouble with a specific relationship, if you can step back and kind of reset the relationship with that person. Hey, look, let's just start this from scratch. We're both in this. That's really great for compliance. Doctor's orders. Keep it simple. Simple requests are hands down much more effective than complex requests. Explain why people are doing things. And if you can't come up with a good reason as to why your employees are filling out forms or doing certain tasks, maybe it's time to step back and consider not doing those, okay? And the last one is that focus on relationships. The relationship impacts adherence and compliance. And if your people don't think you care, if you're constantly interrupting, you're not going to get the adherence and compliance that you'd like. Compliance in medicine starts with the doctor. It starts in the exam room, okay? Compliance in business needs to start with our leadership. Our leadership has to get these simple things right. You have to do these simple things to have any impact on compliance, and you need to do these simple things to create the conditions where your people can be successful. Thank you.